Welcome to ShawScope, in an episode where we break with tradition and actually talk about some films from Shaw Brothers, which is
well, that doesn't make sense, really, does it? Because
shocking development.
No, because you're segregated. We're segregating the podcast.
We only talk about Shaw Brothers in this podcast, in fact.
Yeah. So all the in-Shaw scopes have been about Shaw Brothers films, without exception.
All right. Okay, let me start again.
Welcome
to ShawScope, where we're breaking with tradition and actually talking about some films from the Shaw Brothers studio. Fuck you, Darren and Nick. And specifically, we're into Justice Bao for this episode, and at least one more in Shaw. And yes, to your point, probably a couple of not ins as well. We're going to be in the realm of Justice Bao. And I'm Clive, by the way, and those are a couple of argumentative twats there.
Yeah.
You can share your names if you want.
I am argumentative twat number 1.
Good. Right. So
now I'm twat node double I. Yeah.
Justice Bao, if we are to believe the online sources, was a real man from 999 Common Era to 1062 Common Era. And
that was when he was cancelled, I assume, for blackface.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is we're talking Song Dynasty.
Yeah. And you know what? Isn't it a shame you only missed the Battle of Hastings by 4 years?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
If he just hung on, he'd have got there. He might have been on the Bayou Tapestry.
Yeah, he'd have been the one in blackface, wouldn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Those huge wire things coming out the back of his neck.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So, and despite the name, I don't think he was just a politician, apparently, right? But he was given this kind of sobriquet is the correct term, because of his fair ways, right? That's the legend of Justice Bao, that he was the guy he was the uncorruptible guy who, and also maybe took the side of the underdog when necessary and spoke truth to power, and all that stuff, right? A bit of a historical hero. That's the legend, anyway, of Justice Bao.
Yeah.
Basically Angela Lansbury with more gravy browning. Yeah,
and I don't think he had a typewriter either.
I always go on.
No, I'm just saying that he's got the finger torture sorted, right? Finger torture sticks, right? To type in sticks. Not a large leap in technology, really.
So over the years, much has been written of Justice Bao, I suppose, from the oral tradition to operas to plays, and these stories have been handed down and no doubt have been mutated and cross-pollinated over the years, which brings us to 1879 and it's called a novel, but it seems to me to be more of a kind of short story collection, right? Which I didn't get. Did either of you get a copy of this?
No.
I didn't, because it's out of print and quite expensive to export here. So one day I'd like to read it, but if it comes my way. So this is the collection known as The 7 Heroes and 5 Gallants, which apparently predominantly based on oral performances by this guy, Shiyuk guy, I think was his name. And my guess is that all the films and all the TV series, of which there are quite a lot, there's a lot of Justice Bao stuff out there, is probably sourced from 7 Heroes and 5 Gallons. 7 Heroes and 5 Gallons seems to be all the legendary stuff distilled into one. That's the text, right? And that's where all these films and TV series are coming from. There was a whole bunch over the years before our starting point today of 1964, where Shaw get in on that, because yeah, that's where we are. We're racing ahead. We're already at 1964. It'll only take us another 50 years to complete this.
Well, to be fair, when did we start this? 2 years ago, roughly.
I can't remember now. Maybe something like that. Yeah.
I think it would be about 2 years ago, and we've gone 10 years in Shawland in 2 years. So in another 10 years, we might be talking about Kung Fu films.
You never know.
Yeah.
If we're lucky.
Horror films. Yeah.
Yeah.
P. Rumley.
Or we'll still be on P. Rumley. Because I did actually find.
Well, no, he does die in the sentence, doesn't he? So.
But oddly enough, I found something that I think we might actually want to watch for a future episode. Out of the blue, I found a subtitled high definition version of a compilation film called Ragam P. Rumley, which I think is like
Carry On P. Rumley
Parade or something like that. Like those. Yeah, you used to get those like Days of Thrills and Laughter, I suppose, like.
Or the Carry On films.
I was going to say, Carry On Laughing.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
So there's a Ragam P. Rumley apparently, which is like the best of P. Rumley, which I think we might want to take a look at. We've probably seen some of it, but some of it.
Yeah, we are going to have to. We're going to have to rewatch a lot of stuff we've already seen within it. But yeah, it'd be interesting to. Yeah.
Now, if the best
of
P.
Rumley, we could have watched that first, couldn't we?
Yeah. Well, also, if the best of P. Rumley does not include. How is your business doing? Oh, my business is doing fine. Then it's not the best.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Satan. Yeah.
It's got to include that.
Well, and the Fox. And the Fox.
Yeah.
The Fox again.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Who'd have thought 2 years ago that we would have, things that we would demand of a best of P. Rumley compilation? We've come a long way, lads.
Anyway. I forgot to tell you. I meant to tell. Hang on. Sorry, quick aside.
Yeah.
I meant to tell you before we came on air. Tomorrow, I'm going very strangely just up the road, literally like 2 miles up the road from me, is the Malaysian embassy.
Oh,
right, which is a weird place to have the Malaysian embassy. But apparently it's all tied up with the rubber industry. And there's this big mansion, like a huge country house, that's having an open day tomorrow. And I'm going to go there and I'm going to find some old men and women and talk to them.
Yes. That's great too, because the only reason that the rubber industry is in Malaysia is because a bunch of seeds were stolen from the Amazon. Because I happen to be reading a book right now about Clive and I are going to be talking about it fairly soon, about Henry Ford's utopic plan to build a city in the middle of the Amazon jungle in order to make his own rubber so they wouldn't be dependent on the British monopoly that basically existed.
Darren, don't fuck it up now, of course, because the direct approach isn't going to work. What you need to do is sidle up alongside someone who looks like they might know, how is your
myself?
Yeah. Either way, I would imagine one would be less wear and tear on your eyeballs, so you might want to try that one. But yeah.
Well, I could do that thing with the little milk cartons you get. You know, the little.
Oh, like Penn and
milk
Teller.
things.
No, not Penn and Teller. The Amazing Jonathan used to do it, didn't he?
That's it. Yeah. I could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that brings us.
Anyway, sorry for derailing you.
No,
that was
great.
important thing to mention.
Worth it, I think. Please report back with.
I will.
Yeah, hopefully you will accidentally actually bump into someone who knew Pira well and had stories. I mean, I remember being in Palau. Is it Palau? Yeah, a resort in Palau, and talking to a teppanyaki chef from the Philippines, and it turns out he'd actually seen Weng Weng's live stand-up comedy act.
Awesome.
And he assured me that he was absolutely hilarious. It's good to talk to people sometimes. You never know what you might.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're in 64 into 65, and we have a trio of Justice Bao films, as in particular Ching Miao as Justice Bao.
Yeah. I didn't have it in my head that Ching Miao was synonymous with Justice Bao.
Right.
So that seems to be what it is at Shaw's, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. And there is a fourth one which we'll get to in the next episode, because he's also in King Cat, right? So I think there's 4. It's kind of, I suppose you could consider it the Ching Mao as Justice Bao series. I can't remember, definitely in Crimson Palm, which is our first film, and Inside the Forbidden City, which is our third film. But in the middle entry, The Mermaid, was he also in blackface in that one? I can't remember.
Yeah, he's all in blackface.
Right.
But that is part of the lore, though, isn't it? That is part of the lore of Justice Bao, because apparently he's a very dark-skinned person.
He's what they used to call a swarthy gentleman, I believe.
Well, yes, back in the good old colonial days.
Yes. Or TOTB, as some very foolish young Welsh people who didn't know what it meant used to say.
Yes, indeed.
We'll say no more.
And we would. Yes.
The story has been told, I think, at some point in one of these shows, isn't it?
I think we've done it at some point.
Yes. No need to dwell.
Nope.
So, let's kick off with the Crimson Palm then, from 1964, directed by and written by Chen Yu-shin, who of course also made A Maid from Heaven, which we watched, which also had our lead here. Actually, our lead in a couple of these, Ivy Ling Po. So it's also it's a Justice Bao and Ivy Ling Po special as well, right? Huang Ma opera. All of these Huang Ma operas, we should stress. And also kind of, I suppose that I would say each one of these would work quite well as a bit of a gateway drug, because then there's not too much singing, if that's a obstacle you have to overcome, right? It's just a little.
Yeah, it's not.
No, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah, it's not completely singing, because a proper Wang Wei opera, as we've seen before, is all of the dialogue sung, isn't it? But this is just sort of vignettes generally, isn't it?
Yes, which we've become acclimatized to, but for people who might find that a bit trying, or wondering, for fuck's sake, get on and tell the story and stop singing about what you just did 5 minutes ago. Because it is, it is an adjustment. You do have to, it is an acquired taste, I would say. So this will get you halfway in, I think. If you're, for instance, The Mermaid, it was the only one of these I'd seen before, actually, was, one I saw quite early on, and it was one that, that did ease me into the genre. and it went down, quite painlessly.
Yeah. Well, because it's a load of fun and it's got monsters in.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. And Ivy Ling Poe, this is another one of the brace of films where she plays the male lead, right? Which also takes getting used to at the beginning. But I found with these two, my ability to suspend my disbelief around that was way easier. I don't know if it's because I'm used to seeing her playing men, or if actually her skill at playing a man has possibly also increased since the earlier films we've watched. Because I found her more convincing. Now, whether that's just me or whether that's her, I don't know. But it was really easy for me in both of these films this time to just be like, to go with it and to be like, yep, she's a dude.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would totally agree with that. Yeah.
Also, if they ever did the Huang Mei opera version of Archie comics, she could play Jughead as well. So I'll just say flat out straight to that all three of these are actually, I thought, were quite interesting and pretty good and worthwhile. But I think of the three, this may be the weakest of these three, just in terms of it's the one with it felt to me as if it had the thinnest veneer of a story that was stretched out a little bit, right? So you have it begins with basically it's Ivy Ling Ho is engaged to marry Ching Ping, right? But his and Ivy Ling Ho is a he. His family loses their wealth, so then the father of Ching Ping, Yu Kwang Chao, says, "Well, you could no longer marry my daughter," and there's all that back and forth, and at that very leisurely pace where there's not that much information being transmitted, you get it, but they take their time to sing it, and it's that for a while, and then suddenly kind of pivots quite quickly into a murder mystery, with the only kind of foreshadowing is this credit or pre-credit sequence, which is quite nicely done, and the title Palm, and that's the only clue, and you kind of forget about it. You're like, oh, you forget that was a thing, and then it turns into the murder mystery, which is when the Ching Miao as Justice Bao enters the scene, and then all lived happily ever after as well is the final subtitle, which I quite liked. So, but yeah, so it felt to me it's the one that's maybe the kind of least substantial and most fluffy and light, not fluffy and lightweight, because it's kind of it does get a little dark here and there, but I don't know, it felt like the one felt the most like matinee filler or something like that, but but fun.
Yeah, but I mean, there's no subtext in it, really, is there? It's just it's a straight up murder mystery, isn't it?
Right.
It's not really saying anything. It's just a cool film about Justice Bao solving a mystery, Ivy Ling Ho being a dude, and there's lots of red herrings and who did it, who didn't do it, who were the suspects. You don't find out until the end. It's not one of those. So yeah, it's straight up murder mystery, isn't it?
There's a bit as well where I mean, I know you're not supposed to think, you're supposed to think like a musical, but I couldn't help thinking there's a sequence where there's a character hanging around outside the house for a clandestine meeting, singing really loudly. Like I was thinking, you're gonna get caught.
Yeah.
Sing now. This is not singing time. Like, I thought that was good.
So there's a review on Letterboxd by somebody called Ian Whitney, and he says that he thinks this is basically the Huang Mei opera coasting. This is its middle age, He basically thinks that
I would buy that.
earlier ones were more staking out, more you know, they were more experimental because they were figuring it all out. And then at this point, and then he argues that the two we're going to talk about afterwards, the 1965 ones, begin to kind of try to do other things. So they are starting to again push in slightly different directions, but that this is kind of it's a little safe, it's a little easy, it's a little bit like
which is difficult to see looking back. It's kind of like that weird thing, is it, where from nowadays and even as far back as like in the 80s when I first saw it or something, when you're looking back, you tend to think of like Stagecoach, John Forge's Stagecoach. It's like you think of it as like a foundational classic Western, right? But back in 1939, they'd already gone through like several cycles of Westerns being popular and not popular. And Stagecoach, when it was new, would have been considered almost like, I don't know, maybe like what Pulp Fiction was to the crime genre in the night. Do you know what I mean? It would have been
It was derivative. It was derivative.
Yes, or breathing new life into something, you know, with old tropes and remodeling. But I would also, that's quite an interesting point. That what was his name? Ian Whitney.
Ian Whitney, yes.
Thank you, Ian. That's quite another thought it provokes. And again, I have no basis for this. I haven't read this anywhere. But the total guesswork. It would also make sense that maybe they made this small little Justice Bao film, and maybe it was surprisingly popular. This might have been like a minor hit, and then they decided, and then they made Mermaid inside the Vinci and King.
Yeah. Well, let's not forget as well the popularity of Ivy Ling Poe at this point. So this is probably the peak. This is probably peak Ivy Ling Poe, isn't it? So
yeah, but again, she would have been. She would have been assigned whatever would have been her. You know, they would have put her in.
Yeah, but she's also basically a phenomenon at this point in terms of Hong Kong pop culture.
Right.
At this point in time.
Yes.
So she's been kicking about for what, 2 years? Or a year even. I lose track because it takes us so long to get through the fucking years. But at this point she's been kicking about, and there's Ivy Ling Poe hysteria in Hong Kong, isn't it? She's like the Beatles level hysteria. Because of, well, I don't even know how different she's meant to be, but just because of whatever she tapped into in the early 60s. But yeah, she's like, you know, in Hong Kong in the early mid-60s, Ivy Ling Poe is Elvis and the Beatles, and there's hysteria about Ivy Ling Poe, isn't there?
Yeah, so I mean, yes, I don't know how much to weight to put on this particular film. Like I said, it's reasonably enjoyable fare, but you know, that's about it. I don't know if I have that much.
It's a bit bogged down in hairpin related shenanigans. At a certain point I was like that A Tale of Two Hairpins. Like I literally had trouble following, which may just be stupid, but like some of the ins and outs of you know who did what when.
No, I agree with you. That is you being quite stupid.
Oh, dense, yeah. It's likely the case. But also,
it's like, yeah, it does. Does there need to be a fake hairpin?
Yeah,
not manufactured as a fake, but it's just a cheaper one that the maid has.
Yeah.
And
then I think, you know, Bao in all three of these films is kind of held back almost as like a special effect, right? Like he's not he's not a main character in any of the three films, but in this one especially, he enters the fray quite late in the narrative. Just kind of shows up almost as a Due Ek Machina, or however the fuck you say that, kind of dropped in by Ivy Ling Poe's mum, who brings him in to be like, you need to sort this out. And we do get some sort of quasi-adulterous style in well, 2 out of these 3 films, right? Torture stuff going on. And this is, I do like the stuff. This is the one, right, where the father-in-law character, right, he's really sketchy. And so he's basically trumped up these charges in order to try to have Ivan Poe's character killed so that his daughter won't be able to marry this, you know, poor this scholar or whatever, you know. It gets a bit overlapping because basically Ivan Poe plays virtually exactly the same character in The Mermaid, right? With a very simple setup, except that we have a supernatural element in that film.
Yeah. Although there's quite a nice supernatural-ish resolution to this, isn't there? There's a nice little strategy that Justice Bao uses to get all, you know, so, you know, for 2 or 3 minutes we get the Bava filters again, don't we?
Yes, yes.
And a coffin and a ghost.
Yeah,
but,
yes.
You know.
But that's done much more elaborately and so much better in Forbidden City, when we get
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Shall we move on to The Mermaid then?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
So here we go. Yeah, released at the very beginning of 65 in January, I believe. So yeah, a 64 film again, basically. Directed by Kao Lee, but maybe of more interest to us. A Chang Che screenplay, right? The same year, I think he directed his first film for sure, right? The Butterfly Chalice, which I'm guessing is not extant because it's not on our list of things to watch. But yeah, no, worth noting. I mean, it didn't really jump out at me as, you know, it's not, oh, this is so Chang Che or anything like that, but it's just worth noting that it is a Chang Che script. And yeah, again, I mean, this is in a way, this is even more gentle than Crimson Path, right? It's a kind of a much more kind of languid, kind of slow moving, kind of pleasant, so a little bit of quite charming, I found.
Yeah.
Well, obviously it has Ponyo / The Little Mermaid elements, right? I mean, in that way, like, is it in some way inspired by the Hans Christian Andersen story, or is there a Chinese mermaid myth that this is riffing on?
No, I think there's a lot of stuff without having read extensively. I think there's a lot of, and we've seen it before as well. We've seen it before in things like Made from Heaven and various other things.
And the green and white snake, I suppose, as well.
Yeah. Where sea creatures who have been around for 1,000 years decide to fall in love with mortals, and then they give up their...
It's funny enough, this is a note I wrote for the next one, Forbidden City as well, but it serves here as well, is, please refer to the what's it called? The, what's the first person's name? Aki Thompson Uther Index, right? Which is this, so for instance, inside the Forbidden City's source story has been labeled ATU 707, right? So there's this index, international index. You can find it online. It's quite fascinating, which is basically they've cross-referenced all variations of folk tales from around the world and assigned them little category boxes. If this is making sense. So how certain stories from Indonesia or something will cross-sect with, you know, like a French, and they all seem to have this kernel of the same either allegory or message or something like that at its core, and they've kind of collected them together. It's quite a you end up looking, if you look it up, you'll end up hours later you'll still be researching, but it's quite a fascinating and monumentally mind-boggling kind of in terms of the work they put into it, how they've done this, and what's really good about it as well, it doesn't go into the annoying Joseph Campbell trap of, you know, of don't worry about that detail, therefore it fits into this narrative, right? It's quite expansive, and there's plenty of room for it to all fit. So I would recommend looking that up, even though I couldn't remember what it was to tell you. But yeah, if you type in Thompson Uther index, you'll get there.
Will do.
Cool. Yeah. Very good.
Why did I start talking about that? Oh yeah.
I was questioning what yeah, if this is a Chinese myth or if this is a reworking of the Little Mermaid.
And of course the answer is both. And
yeah,
both,
exactly.
and yeah, yeah, for all you carp fuckers out there.
Yep.
This is maybe a gateway drug from your, I mean, not to kink shame, but your fishy perversion.
Yeah, she makes a cute fish, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So this is this is Li Ching, right? In a
well, she plays both characters. She also plays the kind of the shitty bright Lee as well, right?
Yeah.
Selfish.
She was also she was also in Crimson Palm. She was the lady in waiting or whatever to Chimping, right?
Yeah.
And she also turns up again, right? And I've actually developed quite a thing for Li Ching. She's quite she's quite cute.
She's a cutie.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Ivy Lane Po again is a scholar who comes to live with Prime Minister Yang Chi-ching, so he can get a higher educational rank and marry his rather spoilt daughter, Li Ching.
Yeah, we didn't mention about the Crimson Palm, but both of these films, there's an arranged marriage that's basically being broken by one side, right? By both cases, it's the dad who's saying, I know that this is supposed to happen, so there's an element of shame around that or whatever, you know, right.
But Li Ching is also this kind of lovesick carp in human form.
When she first shows, actually, the credits are amazing for this film, and all the underwater stuff at the beginning is really well done. I think. I thought that's really cool. The shot of just the fish kind of float, the actual real fish just floating in the water in this green sort of milky water, and then when she shows up and she floats across the water,
that's a really good effect.
Really well done.
Yeah, I was wondering how many takes they had when she just fell in.
Yeah. No, it's really good because she does kind of. It's like she's on roller skates on the water, isn't it?
Or how many times like crew members who wanted to see Li Ching soaked to the skin
in a wet dress.
Oh, sorry, accidentally put things in the way, and she went falling in. So and also so the idea is basically that she comes to life as this doppelganger, right, and tries to steal Ivy Ling power with, because she's much nicer than the actual daughter as well. And she's also got some friends in the form of there's a shrimp, a crab, a turtle, and my favorite, Shirley Wong as a snail.
Yes. And how much fun is it? How much fun do you think you're going to have? Because what I do, I'm sure you do something similar, is just immediately before I watch one of these films, I get my notepad out and I go through and I write all the cast and crew details down, that's relevant. And most of the time, for the first time, I'm viewing all these character names. And how much fun did I think I was going to have when I? Oh, my screen's gone blank. Am I still?
We can still see you.
Good. It's just me. Good, excellent. But how much fun do we think we're going to have when you start writing down for a 1965 Wang Mei opera the character of the shrimp and the snail, and and turns out it was exactly as much fun as I thought it would be.
And things escalate, of course, and the 4 heavenly general and his celestial troops brought in, and the goddess of mercy herself, as played by Ching Miao, gets involved, and they go down.
Yeah, we're going to see her again.
Yeah, they go down into this underwater kingdom, and then it turns into almost like a filmed Peking opera for a bit.
There's a big fight at the end. Basically.
Yeah, it's all good. and you got a very young
Yeah.
15-year-old Lily Lee as well before she was famous as a maid.
Yeah.
No, this
Yeah.
is this is a I believe the term is a rollicking. Maybe I'm looking for. It's just you know it's
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
very I don't know. It's also very gentle and there's a lulling kind of sense that, you know, it's
Yeah.
it's about a mermaid, so it has this like lapping sea like sense. Like it's a very I haven't done this actually with it, but I would imagine it would be a fun film to smoke a spliff to.
Yeah.
To kind of
or to have your 5 and 6-year-old niece and nephew around and whack it on and let them have fun with carp spirits and prawns and shit fighting each other.
Yeah.
You know, and songs.
And they can roll the spliff ball. Well, I would normally edit that out, but I think it's worth keeping in just as an example of how much the mermaid has enchanted us. We totally lost track of time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway,
well, I don't remember seeing the little box with the little countdown coming up.
No, so even Zoom was enchanted.
It was, yes.
Yes.
So yeah.
Even Elon Musk stopped being a cunt for 10 seconds.
I think that's a bit strong, Clive.
5 seconds.
That's a bit strong.
5 seconds, maybe.
So
no, much in the same way as the car has been working on, enlightenment for 1,000 years. I feel that Elon Musk has got nothing, or she's got nothing on Elon Musk and how long he's been working to be a cunt for. So please carry on.
So Ching Li, she because she plays both characters, right? So she ends up interacting with herself as both the carp spirit and as the mean.
Yeah, I mean, the more films of her that I see, I might end up interacting with myself.
So it's great. Like they have these kind of intense pout offs, the two of them, where they're both claiming to be the real one.
If you keep talking like that, it's definitely gonna happen.
I'll tell you what else is good as well is in those scenes where you've got the two Ching Lis, there's a couple of really good double takes from Ivy Ling Po, which are really convincing. She's going,
right,
what?
Yeah.
Yes.
I tell you what, it's almost as good as Double Impact with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yes.
Not quite as good though.
Right. I think we've interrupted Nick enough times now.
Sorry, carry on, Nick.
No. But then it's also worth mentioning that this is a Justice Bao movie. Again, Justice Bao is kind of held back as a bit of a special effect. But in this one, it's kind of great because he's not necessarily playing his usual King Solomon meets Sherlock Holmes, because in fact he gives up because he shows up and then she panics and she's, oh fuck, he always gets to the bottom of the case and figures it out. So she calls on help from Sebastian the Crab and all the rest of them down under the sea, and they all come up and they take the form of, there's a second Justice Bao and a second bunch of his underlings, and then Justice Bao at one point seems to honestly get worried that he might not be the real Justice Bao. The point at which he's like, oh shit, who am I, Justice Bao? And then he just goes, you know what, fucking sort this out yourselves, folks, and just leaves, which is great. The
first time I saw this film, actually, I was wondering if it was even canon Justice Bao or not, or if it was just something that they borrowed. But yeah, I discovered that there's an episode of one of the many Justice Bao TV series where they do this exact same story. So it is Justice Bao canon. Because I would imagine the more of these we watch, we probably will find people straying, right? Like I'm hoping the more we watch, I'll be able to get my head right. So yeah, there's a whole lot of things about cats and rats and cats versus rats and films with cats and rats in the title, and I'm not quite sure which collection or which particular short story or whatever things that, so I'm just hoping the more we watch, some of this will fall into place, hopefully, and we'll know a little bit more, because that's the thing, isn't it? We've talked about this a little bit before, but with Shaw or with Hong Kong films in general, sometimes when you're dealing with having to figure stuff out in English and stuff being written in English, sometimes you're only going to get thus far, and at a certain point you just have to dive in and watch stuff and figure it out for yourself, and then go back, and as much as you want to prep in advance, you know what you're talking about, you just have to take that leap of faith.
Total immersion is the only way to learn.
It seems to be, yeah.
Just fucking sink or swim, buddy. Like throw it off the deep end and try to make sense.
Well, that's what this project is turning out to be, more than I kind of expected it to be. But that's good. I mean, it's something. It's something we can. It's laying down a bit of groundwork we can build on again, because we'll probably go back and forward and figure stuff out and reevaluate and
I will say that I hope that I see more small children playing turtles in fight scenes, because I thought that was awesome, and particularly adorable when one of them gets knocked on its back and the kid's like doing this.
Yeah. I tell you what it reminded me a little bit of as well, a much more kind of threadbare film, because it's not a Shaw film. Have you ever seen that film, Darren? Deadly Snail versus the Kung Fu Killers, I think it's called. It's
yes.
There's a bit of that to it, isn't there? Where
a bit of a I got you. Yeah.
And then
that might go on another list someday, actually.
Yeah.
So the god. So what's the name of the Chinese goddess of mercy? And is it just canon? Is it what in Japan would be called canon? Okay, so when she shows up, she then gives her kind of that Ariel from the Little Mermaid choice of like, you can go fully human, you lose your sort of magical superpowers and marry this human, or you can forget all, like I allow you to forget all of this and go back.
Also, not to be confused with Fat Private Investigator Cannon off the telly. That's it.
Yes. or Cannon and Ball for that matter. But yeah, so when she makes that
would be a different Goddess of Mercy and Bobby Ball. Because clearly Bobby Ball would be really testing the Goddess of Mercy to the limit.
No. There's no. She would there would just be a fucking thunderbolt from the Goddess of Mercy, just obliterating him into a...
that's her doing mercy for the rest of us.
Exactly.
For the final straw, and she'd have his braces like lined with. So he did that one more time, and it just went and sliced his arms off.
Some abominations cannot be allowed to live.
But there's this moment where she makes the choice. She's okay. I'm going to lose.
That's not an abortion reference, by the way.
Okay. Thanks.
Carry on.
So she chooses to lose her powers, and but the process is apparently extremely painful and very high impact, because she does this incredible set of trampoline leaps and fucking full breakdancing, better than anything from the recent Olympics. Like the proper, like almost head spins and stuff, while she's in the process of losing her powers, which is well done. I was convinced she was going through something intense. Hopefully Terrence Stamp isn't going to show up shortly after she loses her superpowers and demand everybody starts kneeling in front of him. That's often what happens when you make that choice, is my understanding.
Superheroes Clive isn't going to understand.
Indeed.
I thought it was a Teorama reference, but it doesn't fit.
No.
But I agree. I think this was a lovely little fairy tale. I think if you go into this, well, go into it however you want, but I came out of this just thinking, yeah, I just saw a lovely little afternoon matinee of a little fairy tale that I've never seen before. And there's a nice little bit of mythology, a nice bit of romance, nice bit of intrigue, nice bit of, you know, comedy and, you know, magical creatures in there. And you can't really go wrong with that.
No, also, I would like to point out that, so I'd seen this before, as I mentioned, and the first time I saw it, I was, enchanted by it, enjoyed it and everything. But I think I did peg it as, well, that's a one-time only watch. I think that, you know, I'm good, don't need to see that again. Not because this Shaw thing wasn't, you know, wasn't even a twinkle in our eyes when I first saw it. But yeah, I got a lot more out because I thought it was very slight. I thought, like, I saw a film you rewatch, you know. But yeah, no, watching it a second time, I enjoyed it just, if not even a bit more this time. Maybe just because I've got a bit more context for it now. So yeah, so it held up. It's it was a bit more robust than I thought it might be the first time I saw it. So yeah, so we all like The Mermaid quite a bit.
Yeah.
What a lovely segue.
Yes. So onwards and upwards, my British chums. Inside the Forbidden City.
Yes.
And you're gonna have to help me out here, lads, because I forgot to write down who directed this one.
Cowley again.
Oh, it is Cowley, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
okay.
And Chang Chia is also co-writer on this one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, there we go. Because I wrote that down, and I thought I'd mistakenly written that down in the wrong. But it's both films, isn't it? That's why.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the 65 does seem to be the blossoming of Chang Chia.
Right.
That we're going to get onto when we do Tiger Boy.
Oh, there'll be a shitload of Chang Chia coming your way.
Oh yes.
Possibly even more than P. Ramlee.
Yeah, well, there's going to be about, well, it's Chang Chia from here on in, really, isn't it?
Yeah, there's going to be an awful lot of Chang Chia. I think we're going to have to try and maybe portion it and package it up in.
Yeah, we'll have to it'll be an interesting exercise actually, and maybe we could invite some comments on Chang Chia going forward.
And of course, we have already done some Chang Chia, right? Because we've done a bit of jumping around in time as well.
Yeah. Well, and the black and white one whose name I can't remember.
Right.
Which is his. Yeah. Anyway, carry on.
So here we go. Yeah. So Inside the Forbidden City seems to be getting back to that Aaron Thompson Uther index, which I thrilled viewers with earlier in the episode. So it's probably one of the most famous stories, the Justice Bao stories, and in the 7 Heroes and 5 Gallants. And I suspect as well, maybe vaguely based on something that actually did happen, right? So this is the Crown Prince replaced by a cat, or more accurately, a civet or chivet, which seems to be like a meerkat raccoon.
A wild cat.
Yeah.
It's been skinned, right? Like, I'm not wrong.
Yes.
Yeah, it looked like a calf or a lamb or something.
My first thought was that, and then
But actually, what it was a gnome.
Yes, it was a devilish gnome.
Yes. So of the three, like, this is the one I think requires a bit more viewers paying attention, because there's a lot of little subtleties here and there in the story, and it can throw you off if you're not paying attention. But the broad stroke, hang on now, I feel as if I've been hogging the limelight here as such. I did the. Does anyone else want to do the story for this one?
Darren, you want to do it?
Rush in at once.
Yeah, all right. Okay, I'll do it. Okay. Oh.
No, you go ahead, Darren, and I can chime in.
Okay. Yeah. So there's an emperor with 2 concubines, and I couldn't quite get my head around this whole thing, but there's whichever concubine gives birth first is going to get position and also like this sphere worry ball kind of thing, which they both get anyway somehow.
Yeah.
But
worth mentioning as well, this emperor, relatively speaking, doesn't have much game, does he? He's only got 2 concubines. It's a bit
well, exactly, yeah. But anyway, they both end up pregnant at the same time, and they both have basically exactly the same. They go into labour on the same day, and there's a little bit of skullduggery and palace intrigue in terms of one of them is very, very ambitious. The other one is quite sort of pure and, kind of, egalitarian. And the ambitious concubine nobles the nice concubine by switching the babies. So the nice concubine gives birth first, and the nasty concubine conspires to switch the babies around for a skinned cat or something, and calls it the devilish gnome. All the while, and this is the important plot point, the eunuchs of the palace instruct Evelyn Poe, who's a maid, playing a woman this time.
Yes.
Which is
quite cute. It's quite funny that it took me a moment to even figure out. I was like, oh, there she is. I was primed for her playing a male role.
Yeah, when's doodling Poe coming?
Yeah. If she wants, she can be Veronica or Betty, not Jughead, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, she's quite cute in here.
Yeah. So anyway, there's this kind of pivotal scene at the river. So the eunuchs, who are kind of in charge, of the senior position, go and instruct the maid Evelyn Poe to take the baby who's born first and sling it in the river. But not like Moses in the basket. It's go drown the baby in the river. And then one of the court officials comes and meets her, and they have a little exchange, and they kind of conspire to save the baby.
This is Ku Wen Chung, right? He's an eunuch as well.
Yes.
Yeah. He's a different eunuch, but another palace.
There's a good eunuch and a bad eunuch, basically.
Yes, but
Shan Yu-Shin is the bad eunuch. The guy who directed Crimson Path.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But yeah, he seems to be in a slightly lower position than the other one. Anyway.
Yes.
So there's this quite cool scene where they kind of don't drown the baby, and they kind of smuggle the baby away. They get caught. So the other eunuch, the evil eunuch, and possibly from memory, the other concubine, kind of accost him and say, "What's in your basket that has the baby in?" And then all of a sudden, the only fantasy element of this film comes in and immediately disappears, and you get no fantasy elements. All of a sudden, the goddess of mercy comes down and turns the kid into a bunch of peaches, which is quite cool. And it's a lovely little effect, and it's the proper kind of, she's floating on a cloud, she's in the sky, and she just, does the whole,
and if
magic-y.
If you listen really, really carefully, vaguely in the background, just as the goddess of mercy appears, you can hear faintly, "Rock on, Tommy!" But it's very faint.
Because he's already in the underworld at that point. Because she's destroyed, she's annihilated it completely. So you've got that lovely scene. The baby gets kind of smuggled away, but it kind of doesn't make a difference, because the evil concubine has triumphed. She's gained a greater position, and then she conspires to kind of minimize the influence and eventually try to kill the other concubine.
Yeah,
and the other concubines.
because she shamed the court by having had this mutant
Exactly.
child.
Yeah.
So she's put into exile in another part of another palace, right? For a decade.
Yeah, and she's played by Ouyang Shafei, who is doing a really good job in this, by the way.
Well, Ouyang Fashe is the mother. Ouyang Fashe is the mother. Yeah, the bad Empress Wu is Cao Pao Shu.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, quite right. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, but Ouyang Shafei is the kind of the downtrodden, the other concubine.
Yes, the legitimate heir, as it were.
Exactly. Yeah. So then Cao Pao Shu conspires to kind of get her out of the palace into this kind of auxiliary kind of.
She's
palace.
good as well. She's I don't know. She's naturally got that kind of mean look to it, doesn't she?
Yeah. Cao Pao Shu is great, and in the coming years, we're going to have a look at her directorial output.
Right.
That's because that's important. And then it's kind of and then you get the kind of framing device of Justice Bao just kind of wandering around on his way somewhere.
Well, I quite like his introduction, isn't it?
His hat blows off.
Yeah, he's being carried past this area, and his hat blows off.
Yeah,
and that's a sign. Hang on, there's something awry around here. And he decides to have a bit of a wander about and encounters this kind of again a kind of a bit Columbo, isn't he?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, and then you've got this kind of, and again you've got this trope, and I've come to love this trope. He goes to see the old blind woman, right? Who, because the son of the blind woman, like entreaties him and says, "Oh, you have to come," and then he eventually goes into the hut of this blind woman, and she sends everyone away. And the reason she's blind is because she's been crying a lot.
Yeah,
I love that. I just love the idea that you can go blind from just crying.
You can literally cry your eyes out.
Exactly.
It's a medical condition.
Yeah, exactly. And then she kind of quizzes him and says, "Oh yeah, apparently you're a good judge." And he says, "Yeah, I am. You know, apparently you operate without fear or favor for anyone, and you're just interested in the law and in justice." He says, "Yeah." And she says, "Well, what if it's the emperor?" And then he goes, "All right then." and then the what is it? What's the Sherlock Holmes adage? The game's afoot. That's the thing, isn't it? Yeah. And then so he starts investigating. He starts getting to the bottom. There's various kind of interrogations. Then
we should mention that Ivy Ling Poe's is not in the film for as much as you think, because basically after there's the whole shenanigans with the switching the babies, and then she rescues the baby that was supposed to be thrown in the river, and then 10 years later this event happens where the young prince finds his way to what we now know is his true mother's part of the castle, right? And then everything kind of bubbles up again, and at this point Ivy Ling Poe's character is tortured and ultimately smashes her own head in against a pillar. It's quite an intense little scene. It's the chief eunuch, the evil chief eunuch, who basically beats the shit out of her and then causes her to commit suicide.
Yeah, and then you've got the whole business as well, a bit at a similar time in the film. Then you've got the whole business of, well, you know, and this being in flashback, because the majority of the film takes place in flashback. Then you've got, like, you know, in flashback you've got, well, you know, Miss Cry Her Eyes Out, Goody Two Shoes, exiled to this other palace in the compound. You know, all of a sudden they conspire just to lock her in there and set fire to the place.
Right.
But they don't set fire to the place because she's already hung herself.
Apparently.
But it wasn't her, it was a maid.
Yes.
Don't find out until later.
There's even a little bit of, I mean, you said the Goddess of Mercy was the only supernatural element, but there is some talk of ghosts, isn't there?
Yeah.
Kind of, Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then you've got and then you get to the kind of the end game, you know, Justice Bao's end game for finding out what the fuck
Justice Bao was a lot more torture-y than we've seen him.
Yes.
He's
Oh,
quite
yes.
torturing. And you know, what was the other film? I couldn't. It reminded me of another film, and I didn't get a chance to look it up. What's the other film where?
Was it Police Academy 4: Citizens on Patrol?
That's the one. That's the one.
I
It's where
thought so.
Corporal Jones took his little microphone thing and went.
Yeah.
That one. Yeah. But there's this whole trope, isn't there, where someone's imprisoned, and then somehow they're like, you know, they're allowed to have their last meal, and then you know a ghost comes along, or they leave the prison door open or something, and they go to the scene of the crime, but everyone's watching them, and this is like the kind of, you know, like the boiled down. You know, the boiled down kind of
the Adulteress
stir-up of this, isn't it? Huh?
Does that happen in the Adulteress?
The Adulteress. It was the Adulteress. Quite
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Cameo from the lovely Li Ching again in this sequence.
Yeah.
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 So it's a very elaborate.
I do like the chief eunuch has. I mean, for a guy who's got no balls, he's got brass balls, because like that whole last segment, he just denies and denies. He's like, no, fuck you. I didn't do any of this. And no matter how badly they torture him, he's just not going to confess and not going to give in. And so it forces Justice Bao to kind of keep coming back at him harder and harder, basically, right?
Yeah. Until he ups his game.
Yes.
To convince the evil eunuch that he has in fact died
and been dragged to hell
and gone to hell.
Which is very fucking Bruegel-esque. Like that, all that stuff with like everyone wearing the big weird bulls' heads and shit and the lighting, and it's like straight out of Bach or Bruegel. It's very
for sure. Yeah. And all of us and Justice Bao just creates this elaborate hellscape, you know, with like demons, you know, dressed up demons, and you know, burning pits of fire and torture in the corner.
That week, Blue Peter must have had a special how to create your own hellscape out of.
That's the one.
How around the kitchen.
Yeah, how to do an Hieronymus Bosch.
Yeah.
In your kitchen
with normal household items. Yes.
Yeah.
Don't forget to get a grown-up to
help with the scissors.
That's it. Yeah. But yeah, so then he creates this kind of elaborate hellscape, and he finally confesses. And the whole story is borne out. And
I do love too
that
that Justice Bao calls for like, oh, just turn on the lights now. Like, and then like some guys come up with big lanterns, and he's like, oh shit, it's all fake, and then they all change out of that costumes.
I've got a theory that Chang Che forgot that there wasn't electricity in olden times, and wanted just to flick a switch, turn the lights on. But anyway, and that's it, and everything's all good in the end, and Justice Bao's still very honourable, and you know, he's the super sleuth.
The good concubine is restored to basically being the queen. And,
it's good, isn't it? Inside this video.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah,
it's. I would say it's. I would put it on a par with the Mermaid, just because they're so different. Like they're very different kind of films, but they're both massively entertaining in their own ways, right? So it'd be interesting to see when we get to King Cat, because I suppose then we'll complete the Blackface Judge Bao Ching Miao
quadrilogy. I believe is the
that's the
quadrilogy.
Yes. It'll be see how that stacks up. No, I mean, everything about it is just, it's just.
Oh, here's a question though that was interesting to me. Was right near the end. So Ivy Ling Poe's character is brought back as a ghost, but not played by her, because she's established
she's actually dead,
and they can't. So they have Ching Li play her, which is quite weird, and that's all she does in this movie is play that ghost version of Ivy Ling Poe.
You can never have too much Ching Li.
No.
But
it's good, and I like the fact that in a lot of these films there's fake ghosts and ghoulies, but filmed in exactly the same way as real ghosts and ghoulies from the same Shaw Brothers time period. You know, so it's all the same filters, and you know, I'm sure they weren't using filters in ancient China to make things green and red and
Right.
Which game came first? Ghosts and Goblins?
Yeah.
Or ghouls and Ghosts? I always thought Ghosts and Goblins was first, but
I thought it was Ghosts and Goblins.
yeah, but I saw something recently that made me think, oh, maybe Ghouls and Ghosts was the first one.
I don't think I know.
No, it's Ghosts and Goblins.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, no, it's just Ghosts and Goblins on like ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64, side-scrolling, kind of jumping over zombies.
Drawing your sword.
Yeah.
Both arcade games originally, right?
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, quite right.
Fucking, I reckon as well. They stack up. They're still some of the best arcade games, and actually the home versions were really good as well. I'm a big fan of Ghosts and Goblins. Nothing to do with this film at all. But
no. Wonder Boy was quite good as well. I always had a fondness for Wonder Boy.
Wonder Boy, yeah.
Ghouls and Ghosts is 1989. I'm sure Ghosts and Goblins is definitely before 89.
No, that'd be 84, 85, probably.
Yeah. I'm more familiar with Ghouls and Ghosts because I had that on the Mega Drive, and that was a fucking good.
I had Ghosts and Goblins on the Spectrum, so
not about Ghosts and Goblins.
48K.
All the K you need.
Yes. Yeah. Rubber keys that would get jammed, and you'd have to get them back out with a knife.
That's the one.
Yep.
Yeah, and on that bombshell.
Yeah, no, I think that brings us to the end of our
Justice Bao
episodes. Yes, Justice Bao and Goblins.
See, if Justice Bao was around, all those Ghosts and Goblins would have been fake.
Yes,
but they were actually real. If only we had Justice Bao to sort out the Ghosts and Goblins. You know, we'd have been playing something else. We'd play Wonder Boy.
I wonder who the real goblins are.